Okay, so Finance Committee at 6:49 on September 25th, 2014. Carol Bites, David Rathgibb, Tamara Tranowski, Andrew Basil, and our business administration are all here to discuss the budget, finish up with the 2014-15 analysis of the budget, and we're also going to be looking at the individual building budgets and the meal plan at the schools. Okay, so why don't we just start with what you guys just sent us, which is the expenses by building analysis. Everybody have a copy of that?
Carol, do you have it?
Building analysis?
Yes. Did you get a hard copy? Okay.
Is it year to date?
It is 13-14.
Yeah, it's the actual, 13-14 actual is what this reflects.
Yes.
Yeah. This is something that's been thrown around and discussed from a variety of, from the standpoint of building closures to, we also have identified the actual utilities numbers for the transition house.
That's actually on a
Separate
different
one.
tab on that spreadsheet is the transition house.
I see that. Transition house, we'll just start with the easy one. Transition house, you guys figure we're spending about $2,500 a year on utilities.
That's correct.
What would you figure would be depreciation or maintenance or anything else on there?
Well, from the standpoint of your reserve study, over 20 years, they plugged $165,000
For the value of the house?
No, ongoing maintenance for anything from windows
Over
to doors.
20 years.
20 years, so $8,000 there.
I would use a standard straight line depreciation schedule based on the value, the economic value of the house over a 30-year period. I mean, that's what I would do, right? I mean,
I don't know, without looking at the duplicate, what the value of that property is.
I'm trying to think. I thought we paid like $240 or something like that for it. I can't remember now. It's been a little while. It'd be interesting, on this spreadsheet, if you guys could add in, the purchase price of the home, closing costs, those types of things, so we understand what our basis is, and then any improvements there too. I believe the transition house lease. Do they not have to take care of the day-to-day sort of stuff inside the house in terms of maintenance and stuff like that, while we're cutting the grass and doing the other things on the outside?
It's I don't know that it specifies it, but I'm told that they have done a routine, fixing a door.
That's what I remember. Yeah.
So, approximately how long ago did you purchase them?
5 years ago,
I'd say about
when we did the stadium. Before we did the stadium, so
Okay, all right. So we can embellish that. I think facilities is going to be looking at that too as it relates to the lease. Am I correct? Yeah. So I'll get that on the agenda for the 13th for that.
now just remember that because that lease, if we're going to renew it or make adjustments to it, we have to do that by the end of the year.
The end of December, correct?
Yeah. But I mean, just looking at it, add some sort of factor to that at home. We're bringing in, I think it's like $1,000 a month for that.
12,000.
So $12,000 a year, even if you're using the $8,000 a year in annual maintenance. I mean, we're covering our costs to own that asset. So it looks to me like it's worthwhile having a lease there in place. Otherwise, just a vacant home there. Anybody have any thoughts on the numbers you see?
Well, I just wondered, what I was going to look at
So low.
the facilities committee was,
Swap.
would it make sense to have them pay the utility costs?
Say what?
Would it make sense to have them pay the utility costs rather than us? Right, that's kind of how I look at it. It doesn't ask to ask them. First ask them to pay it. It's only $2,500 a year, but $2,500 a year.
Yeah, we just don't want them picking up and going somewhere else at the end of the day.
That's why I said I wouldn't want to make it a deal breaker. But,
Yeah.
do you know what the address is for the?
511 Chestnut Street.
Okay. All right, why don't you guys walk us through your building analysis?
Well, what that is the actual paid last year on each building. The utilities down at the bottom are included in the 600 and the 400 areas up at the top, so it's not a duplication there.
So line item number 700, property capital and non-capital expenses, shouldn't that included the boilers?
No, that goes through the
Reserve
32
fund. This is just the general fund, the normal general fund expense.
Well, then it wouldn't be capital, would it? You wouldn't have
Well,
capital expenses there.
That's the way they label it from PDE standpoint, but this is not the capital reserve fund, this is the general fund.
Okay, the only other thing I would add then is what are we spending in terms of capital dollars on these buildings as well? Because obviously if you have a money pit somewhere, someone's going to, that was the concern that some people had as it related to the closure of BEC last year, where people didn't want to put additional dollars into a building that, you know, we might be able to close. So it'd be interesting to see what our capital expenditures are or anticipated to be for these different buildings
Okay, and
going forward.
That would be, I would just plug in the study, the reserve study.
Well, I'd look at the reserve study, but I'd also take a look at historical costs, because obviously if you got one particular building you're putting money into every single year, then it's more than likely going to be making those same kind of contributions going forward. And does that jive with what the reserve study is pointing out?
We can work backwards. The reserve fund was pretty much, well, that's generated, has been generated by your energy, your electrical savings, and you pretty much max that out with the boiler project. So I'd have to go back and get some historical data from 3 or 4 years prior. I don't know what kind of a capital reserve fund you've had through the years.
We had about $20-something million at one point in time. It's all gone
right?
now, yeah.
Okay.
So
Well, this took, what, 9 of it?
this building was 9, stadium was 4.5.
So a lot happened in the last 7 years.
Oh, yeah.
There was a lot of building
lot,
going
yeah.
on. Let's see.
We'll go back 7, 10 years. Go back
Well,
7 to 10
Monocacy
years.
is 10 years, right? Monocacy's about 10 years old. And it's,
Well, Monocacy is only 4 or 5.
Yeah, we finished that up like in 09,
Yeah.
08, 09 we finished the
okay,
building.
well then the stadium came after
And the
that.
stadium came after that.
Well,
And
the
APC
cornerstone
came
of the
after
middle
that.
school is 5. Isn't the middle school 5?
No.
The middle school's a little bit older.
No, because my daughter graduated in 13 and she went to the middle school her whole first 6th, 7th, and 8th.
I thought I saw 5 on that.
No, that's, middle school's probably
Find out.
at least 10, if not, maybe more than that.
Because AIC opened before the middle school, right? Or how many elementary now? Was AIC back then?
Oh, yeah, that was,
And that opened 99, 2002?
I was gonna say, let's see, if she graduated in 13, she would have been in middle school in what? 2008? 7?
Kenny told me the middle school was built in 2005.
Do you have
Okay.
one of the
Well, that'd be
audits?
probably right.
Yeah, that's about right, because my
2005.
daughter's a senior now, and middle school was like brand new when she was there.
It's in the audits.
Well, that's
I don't
what
think-
8 years
we don't
ago,
need
because
to.
my daughter
We'll
went
go back
to
10 years
school
and,
been out of
Well,
school.
2005.
Right, so, yeah,
And then move forward.
I don't think it was her first year, I don't think it was the first year open.
We'll go back 10 and go forward 20.
All right, so $4 million for BEC, $6 million AEC, $4.1 million for MEC, $8.5 million for middle school, and $11.2 million for the high school. And then 16.6 million administration debt. How much is debt?
6.
$7 million a year, right?
Correct.
6.9 a year.
And that includes other things such as student transportation and charter school expenses are a large expense there as well. So it's not, and it's expenses you really can't allocate to buildings.
Would that be other purchase services? Is that what that's?
Other purchase services would be transportation and charter and other LEA and private school expenses.
So other purchase services also include, like, if we have special ed that we either have to outsource, we have to bring in like physical therapists or nurses, that's in
Either
Other-
if it's labor, it could be coded to 300. If it's a program outside the school, it would be coded to 500.
okay. All right, so if they're in the schools here, it would be 300.
If it was a contracted service, yeah.
Okay.
So, how does this help us here? That's the question I'm trying to ask myself. So, you're going to take a look at utilities. Between the BEC and MEC, they're about the same. If you're looking at property expenses, MEC is a little bit more expensive than BEC.
But it almost looks like that's because of salaries. 'Cause the salaries are about 100,000. Well, not quite, but I wonder if so even if you lost that school, but you still had
You're going to still
those
keep the
kids,
teachers and
right?
the
You're
kids.
still gonna have the teachers. So yeah.
I'm just trying to get a sense of what if a building were to close, what are the savings going forward? So it's hard to do with this particular spreadsheet the way it's set up because everything's aggregated into very small clumps of code.
How much detail, what detail do you want?
Well, I think you'd want to strip out. Those costs that are associated particularly with a specific building as opposed to the students inside the building.
Right, okay, beyond the utilities. that
So
are
utilities is
specific-
very simple, right? What transportation would be one,
That's gonna be because I don't know that they code,
but you have to know how many buses are going to a particular building and where those buses are coming from, right?
see, that they go to multiple buildings.
Do they?
Now, yeah.
All right,
And
well,
they do the double bus
That's
runs.
the tough part. of
that may
breaking
not
down
be easy to do.
transportation.
You have, I'm assuming property, capital, non-capital, that's just, what is that? What makes up that number?
It could, any equipment, basically. You could look at it as equipment, whether it be at a capitalized price or not. Well, think computers, things of that nature.
And
When
the
you say
one,
equipment, is that lawnmowers? Is that
Could be.
plows? Is that
Could be.
HVAC equipment? Is
Anything
it,
over $5,000 would be considered equipment, where below that threshold is 600 supplies.
I see.
and salaries and benefits would be all salaries and benefits, so it'd be professional and support staff.
Help me out here, Mike. Yeah,
It
we were just talking
includes
about that.
all the expenses for the school district.
Well, I'm just saying, because if you close the school, you're probably going to need to keep the teachers, but you might be able to lose support staff.
Custodians, a nurse,
Just had this discussion.
librarian.
And trying to identify what could be eliminated.
Yeah, it's hard.
I think that's going
It's
to
a
be,
good start.
yeah, I mean, this is a good start. I think what's going to be very helpful is understanding, what expenses are unique to the building as opposed to the population that occupies the building.
So
Because,
we could break down the 100 area further
Could.
by, because we could go into the 2300s for the admin principals. We could go into the 22s, 24 nurses, for instance.
well, nurses may also be based on population too. I mean, I don't know. I mean,
It
you
is.
get
It is,
1,000
yeah.
kids packed into one building. You're going to need more than one nurse probably,
But
but
we could break everything down by salary. 1,100 is regular ed teachers, 1,200 are special ed teachers, all the way down through, and break those salaries right down to every category.
what makes up 400 when you say property services?
Well, that's a variety of things. The water and sewer is a 400 account, for instance.
Any maintenance, if you have an outside,
Contractor come in.
that's the best outside contractors is the bulk of it.
So that will go away for a particular building.
To a large degree, I would think it would reduce if you're not using it on a regular basis. If you maintained it, if you leased the
I
building.
would think we probably have a good basis to utilize this building as to what the utilities and maintenance costs would be, because this was mothballed for.
Well, it was mothballed for 1 year. When we brought it back online, that was mothballed for another year.
So we probably have some good numbers to kind of base what the utilities would be for.
I think for this building it was like 79. Well, I don't want to throw that number, but we'd used $79,000 1 year as a basis for. I believe it was in utility costs and everything else for this particular building, which doesn't seem like it's out of line with what I'm looking here for utilities for these other buildings.
Well, last year, this is the 13-14 year. You used it for 3 months.
Yeah, and you're telling me it was $53,000, but that also included utilities for Matthew Brook too, right? Were we paying for those over there?
I believe so. Yeah.
Yeah.
That would be tied into that, yeah.
All right, well, that's what I would say to you guys is that,
All right, we'll drill deep.
start pulling out exactly what it was. If you're going to shutter a building, then what would the costs be in terms of savings in year one, and then exponentially out as you go? And I think where you're going to see an accretion of dollars is going to be in the salaries and benefits, where you have, a fixed asset like an employee that's fixed to a building that's under the goes. Is that administrative staff? Is that an administrative secretary? Is that a custodian? Is that a nurse? Is a librarian? I don't know what that is, but
Okay.
Do those positions disappear with the closure of a building? And if they do, what's the impact going forward? Any other thoughts or comments? Yes.
What would property insurance be under?
It's a 500.
Is that broken out by building here? Is that overall we have
It's
insurance
probably
as
in the admin,
an umbrella?
District-wide.
The insurances that can be broken out are, but the district-wide ones are not.
Right. Most of it's district-wide.
So what, I'm curious about in the 500 under admin debt,
Yes.
5 million,
Yeah.
5.5 compared to, a lot less per building. What's in that number? That's
5.5 to 500 in the admin, that includes student transportation, charter school expenses, any non-Daniel Boone LEA expenses. That's the student transportation and then the charter school non-Daniel Boone LEA expenses are the bulk of it.
okay. Thank you. And then the 4 million under admin on the 800 category.
You've got part of
That's-
your interest for your debt service.
Oh, okay.
That's the bulk of it,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay, good. Got it.
I have from Ken Smith, this was back in like March, facilities, when we were looking at the utilities for this building were approximately 70,000 last year. It was open.
70?
70, and it was projected to be about 50 to 55,000 when it closed. So,
Curious to see what it actually was.
and that was part of my argument, in the fact when people were upset that like River Rock was only paying 41% of sewer in the sense, it's better than paying nothing, because we had to pay it all when it was closed. So if you can get, or even though it's closed, they're still going to charge you water, and they're still going to charge
Yeah,
you
you
some
still want to keep
electric, and they're still going to
your
charge you
AC on
sewer.
in summer
Right.
because you don't want the building.
Right, so, but yeah, so
So
that's,
he was projecting that
the
with it
utilities,
open, it was going to be 70,000?
the last year it was open, he said it was approximately 70,000. And that, with it being closed, he was projecting it, and basically well, it was March, so he had 5-6 months of the year in he was looking at about 50 to 55,000. So you're looking at a savings of 20.
Could be a little more,
It could be, right, but
but nothing with what PA and Rutherford.
well, I hate to say it, but unfortunately, Birdsboro, their water and sewer is 3 times as much. Oh my God, it's horrible. My water bill last quarter was $575.
What?
$575.
That's not
For me and
right.
my daughter, that was my sister and her son are living with me right now, but for just my daughter and I,
The long hair.
it's
your-
$275 is the minimum.
Your shampooing, your conditioning, your.
You're
See,
right.
me, you know.
How much was that, a quarter?
It's, the minimum that I've ever paid was $275 a quarter, I think. It was last quarter it was $575. I
And
have
that's, but that's water and sewer.
water and sewer,
You
right.
have the pristine Hay Creek Reservoir.
We do. They say the average sewer bill.
It's because they screwed up when they built that plant.
Is between 500 and 600 per family of 4.
Yeah. One EDU up north is 75. And that's just sewer, no water.
Well, the problem is, they did absolutely no maintenance or repair on a system for 35 years so they could keep the rates low. And then DEP came in and mandated that you got to build a new plant. Well, you don't have new growth, so somebody's got to pay for it.
Okay, any other comments on the building analysis? You guys have a sense of where you're going to go with that
Yep,
then?
Yep, we'll dig.
Okay, then let's just switch back to the 14-15 or 13-14 sort of budget. You guys are going to look into a couple of the numbers that we still had some questions on.
I'm not sure we got to that, but go ahead. What were
All right, well, one of the questions we had was under supplies, 2,600, 600. The final 13-14 budget was 1.3 million. Final pre-audit 13-14 costs were at 1.1 million, with a difference of almost $300,000. And you guys were going to look into why that was so dramatic. I mean, so dramatically different. You thought electricity alone was over $200,000, but that seemed like that was a little. Maybe it was, but
We'll get that. To be honest with you, the week following that meeting, we went into full-blown audit on the 8th, and we haven't stopped. And so we'll get that for you. My apologies.
Well, I think the only reason why it's significant is because we're looking then at the final 14-15 budget at 1.2 million.
Yep.
Is that the right number or isn't it?
Yeah, we'll get that for you.
Because that's still a $200,000 difference between where we ended up in 13-14 and where we're projected to go. So, I mean, $200,000 seems like almost $300,000 seems like quite an anomaly. So what else I got highlighted in here? Let's see, supplies was another one. We were at like $60,000 and we came in at 16. I know we had a budget freeze, but that was a drop of about $40,000. I'm sorry, let me back that up. That was under administration, 2300-600. And in general, all over supplies were considerably less. That was one of the consistencies that we saw. Every single line item, it was down significantly. The other one you guys are going to dig into is special ed.
Yep. I've got a note here to
1200-300. There was a difference of about $250,000 there. We weren't sure if that was one student, was it multiple students? Is that something we should, because we felt that we know what our special education population is, and by name, and therefore we should be able to track what their needs are and whether or not they're at out district placements. Are they going to come back? Are they going to stay where they are? And why did we get the jump? Was it tied to one or two specific students? And should we expect them to be wherever they are at for the next 3 years? Or Are they gone, and that number should come back down again? I mean,
I requested, I didn't get that data, but I'll follow up with her on Monday. And you also had questions on the vocational enrollment.
yes. Was it going up, down, same?
I'll get that.
Because our tuition's based on enrollment. I think it's a 3-year average.
At BC.
Isn't that right? 3-year running average?
All right, I'll get those.
I think the only other last one was 1200-500 was other purchased services under
That's
special education.
That's related to the other one.
Right. That was like $100,000. Do you have anything else, Tamara? I don't have anything else there.
No, I think that
We'll get that emailed out to you first of the week.
Okay. All right, so moving on, let's go into what you guys have dug up for
Sodexo?
Sodexo.
All right, we'll give you the short version quick.
Do you guys need a recap of where we were with that? Okay.
We, a meeting had been scheduled with them, by them, to discuss our expectations for this year.
Mhm.
That was held yesterday. And we expressed our concerns to them in the dramatic drop in participation.
Yeah.
And of
It's
course-
been an ongoing trend, by the way. I mean, if you look at the last 3 years, 4 years audits, meal rates have gone down precipitously, and I think I sent you some of the spreadsheets that Mark had sent to me
Yes,
about
you did.
this that we were looking at last year. And
Well, anyway, their immediate response is that, you can pass it, is that Boone raised prices on both a la carte and on meal prices, therefore,
It's our fault.
that's what happened. So it became a bit of a stalemate. But the
now,
bigger-
they told us, they made a recommendation on the meal prices, by the way.
I think where we're going to end up is having them with the board in discussion before it's all done. Because Mike and I they can tell us anything, what happened. But anyway, what I was saying to them, look, when I see a 39% participation rate by the students overall, if you look at the top half of that sheet in the far right, by building, that's the actual participation for all categories, free, reduced, and paid. 39% of the student population is using the food service. And then when you dig into those that are eligible for free and reduced, and even though they're eligible, they're still not participating. You look at the number of free, you've got 747. Let me get my numbers straight here. 747 eligible for free total, and only
20% of them are using it? Is that how that works?
Go down to
Or
the
is it
bottom.
20% of the population?
That's
Okay,
percent. That's
what I
percent of
thought.
population. The bottom half, where I calculate the number of there's the number of students. For instance, AEC has 76 students eligible for free, so we have the potential of 13,072 in the actual 76. So the participation is only 58%. And you go over in the reduced column, and it's better. And that's pretty consistent, 75, 67. But I just simply said to them, it's got to be a marketing situation here that they're not, the students aren't participating in your program. And then
This is just lunches, right?
Yes, I didn't do breakfast. I just did lunch here. Then I said to them, they said to me, well, in the breakfast in the high school now, the students can't go to breakfast because of the timing of the buses and all the rest. And I said, well, put in a grab-and-go line. Well, her response to this came this afternoon, which I think is ridiculous, but nevertheless, can't express my opinion here. I shouldn't. But the bottom line is, as Mike and I have dug into this contract, and you're in the 5th year, entering the 5th year of this agreement with the guarantee in it, Their interpretation of the guarantee isn't our interpretation. We were of the mindset.
Sure you sent the right thing,
What did I send you?
right? Snack machine?
Yeah, that's her
instead of
answer.
breakfast-
That was her answer? I was like, okay, then wonder I'm totally confused.
Look at the bottom line.
Purpose of the snack machines would be to increase food service revenue.
Wait, are you even allowed to sell ice cream
Well, that's,
and stuff?
I think she must have misinterpreted your question.
no, she didn't misinterpret. They mentioned this in the meeting yesterday, that they might go to a vending operation.
And
And
what is the rationale on the timers that you can't get, that they don't why do we care when they're dispensing the food?
Well, there's, according to wellness policy and the NSLP guidelines, if you have vending operations in the building, there is certain times that you're not supposed to have them operational.
All right, because I know in the middle school, the one that when we used to be in the middle, I tried to get water out of a vending machine one night. It just sells water, and you couldn't
It was
because
locked
it
out.
wouldn't work during certain hours.
So wait a minute though, this looks
What?
to me, I'm looking at our statistics. So the 11-12 year, we had 249,000, effectively 250,000 lunch sales, paid lunch. In 12-13, we had 192,000 paid lunch. So we dropped by 58,000 lunches. But now we're back up to 242, almost 243 in 13-14. So that looks like that's a success. I mean, things went up, even though we raised prices.
Well, I didn't, you're looking at that spreadsheet you sent me. I took the actual, at the end of the year, that's where I come up with that 240.
Yeah, but this is for 242,680 is for 13-14, right?
That's right.
Right. I'm looking at historical stats now, too. So historical stats, we were traditionally at 240, 250, and then we were dropping precipitously,
Okay.
right? And then, so we said, well, what's going on? They said, well, they don't like the meal plan you guys are putting together and, this type of thing. Plus, we were required by law to raise our prices a number of years ago because we weren't charging enough for the reimbursement rate.
That's part of
Okay.
the new nutritional standards.
Right. So then we adjusted to be compliant with the law, and we raised our numbers. And in particular, we raised our numbers on a la carte to try to disincentivize people from purchasing a la carte and push them back towards the meals. And, now I see we're at 242, so it looks like we went back up by another 60,000 meals. That's not a bad thing.
No, if it's,
But, you're telling me overall participation rates are low, so it should be even higher. What would a normal participation rate be?
Do you want?
What's the benchmark we should be shooting for?
I'm saying when you put everything into perspective, when you've got such a low participation within your free and reduced, even if
Where's the free and reduced on here? On the left?
If you look at the bottom section, lunch participation by eligible free and reduced students,
Yeah.
if you could get those percentages up, those are the easy ones. You've got a transparent point of sale system, then
Well-
your overall numbers could come up.
If it's free, there's no benefit to the school district, right?
Just additional subsidy.
Additional subsidy. But it costs us to produce, right?
Well, yes, but nevertheless,
You can't be getting it, in terms of the subsidy, you can't be getting enough in that covers the...
well, you're getting $3.11 for every lunch meal on free.
From the government. So the government pays us.
Yes.
Where's that on here? Where's $3.11?
Up above where it says lost revenue, I put a cell in with
Here.
Oh, I see.
and what'd she say yesterday? A lunch cost $2.50 to produce? Something like that. She threw out.
This is the reimbursement rate.
But all these numbers aside, the problem that we find yesterday when we approached them, we put the actual numbers for 13-14 against the projected numbers per the contract, and
We're going to be short.
we're short. And she became very, I don't know how you want to describe it. She said, we've lost money here the last 2 years, and we're not writing any checks. And I said, wait a minute. If I understand the agreement,
We have a guarantee.
there's $106,000. Well, she said, but you're using the wrong numbers. And I said, well, I've got to see your math, because we're using our actual numbers. And she said, well, we don't pay your benefit. You can't use benefits. I said, the projection says salary and benefits as part of the expenses that drives out the bottom line. She said, no, we don't pay benefit. We don't benefits. I said, that's what it says. Well, she said, it doesn't say it in the original RFP.
Doesn't matter what the RFP says,
Yeah,
the contract is what matters. So if we need to get
Exactly.
Subers
So-
involved,
So, well, that's exactly what I said to Mike when we walked out of the room. I said, this just became a legal matter. She is going to commit, another piece of it is the way this is a fixed meal contract. I analyzed all of the invoices for last year and the number of meals that they don't itemize the number of meals.
explain a fixed meal contract for.
Well, we pay $265 this past year, I believe. $265 per meal. So every month when a bill comes, it just says October fixed price at $265 a meal. There's the number. Then they give you a credit for the labor and a credit for the commodities that they use. And I can't make any of the numbers work. So I said, somebody's got to show me the math here. So she's agreed that if she can do it, fine. We've got another meeting we're going to be scheduling here in the next 2 weeks to analyze this. And I said to her, has there been an annual meeting where you sit down with the district and reconcile the operation during this contract
don't.
to determine?
Never.
She said, no.
No, they never.
And that's when she said that they've been losing money the last 2 years, and so they didn't want to, nobody wanted to meet.
We've actually had them in here several times in the last 2 years as we've been looking at this, because what cued me on it was when I started looking at the audit and I watched the numbers precipitously drop in that fund, right? And we're going to go negative. And I said, we got to step in and do something about this. That's when Danielle Peznik stepped, we had her looking at it. She said, well, according to the federal, reimbursement rate, we're not charging enough. This is what we're supposed to be charging as per law. So we changed the pricing, and that didn't really make much of a difference. Meals continue to decline. And so we stepped in again and said, okay, well, obviously there's a problem with the meals. There's a problem with, our marketing efforts. What is the issue? We had, I think the guy's name was George.
He's the predecessor to Cindy that's here now.
We had George in. We spent a whole, 3 hours talking about what we're going to do. Mark spent I don't know how many hours doing analysis of the different spreadsheets, trying to make a determination as to what we should recommend in terms of pricing, and also how we would break out the meals separately to either monetize the a la cartes or dissuade the students from purchasing a la carte and push them back towards the meals. And this is when we got in a whole discussion about how certain things had to be included with the meal to make sure you get the reimbursement, and kids didn't want those things, so they buy it anyways, walk away, and throw it in the trash. And then we were told, well, you couldn't even pull it, have them put it on the counter so we could use it again. You couldn't turn around and sell it again. It had to be thrown away.
Mm-hmm.
So they were literally throwing away milk that had never been opened. Just
Can you give it away?
No,
you can't give it
even
away.
even if it's full, you can't let another student,
It's
technically not.
completely ridiculous. So that's where we had left it. And Sodexo, quite frankly, the last time I remember we were talking, because Cindy came in, she was reassigned, and she had somebody else with her, and the discussion was that they were going to sit down and map all this out so that the guarantee was paid, and that they were going to drive meals forward. And then we never heard back from them. So
We have no...
that was like last March, April, or something like that.
We can't identify in the last 4 years that there was ever any payment from Sodexo
To the school district.
Correct.
Well,
As far as his settlement.
I think we need to get
Lawyer.
Subers involved sooner than later here.
Yeah. Because when you look at what's attached to your contract, at the top is very clearly projected operating costs, but it's got this fixed amount in for, it says direct labor and benefits, $586,434. That's in there for 2 successive years. And I said, wait a minute, this is projected. What we put together is actual. What our actual, she said, you can't use that. You got to use this number. I said, why? And that's when meetings cease.
Right, it got, yes, exactly.
So, just so that's where we're at, trying to drill into this because
My recollection from the contract is that we're supposed to be getting like $100,000 a year.
106 is your
right,
guarantee.
right.
Your guarantees have gone from, and that's the other piece.
And it was
that-
reduced from
Yes.
something prior to that.
Yes, in
Down to
March-
107, 106. I think I
No.
remember them saying, "Oh, well, we got to look at that because going forward it only may be like 80 something."
It started out, with the RFP, it started out at 155,579. And it very clearly says, financial guarantee with an exclamation mark in your RFP. If at the conclusion of the school year, Daniel Boone's food service program does not meet or exceed the agreed-upon financial performance of 155,579, Sodexo will reimburse the district for the difference. Sodexo guarantees a return of 155,579 for not only the initial year, but for all 5. The total 5-year guarantee to Daniel Boone is $777,895.
Right.
And we can find, we're looking at the operation and saying, we think we had a loss all along.
We have had losses. I don't know if it was all along.
So anyway, this is what we're finding in that first year that became the first year contract, and then they attach these projected worksheets in the subsequent years, and we're saying, hey, this is projected. We're going to plug in actual
Right.
and drive out our number, and we had a loss. We want to check. She said,
That's
"No,
correct.
that's not the way we're going to do it." I said, well,
Well,
Sounds
this
like
meeting is
Wall
over.
She did make the comment that the 106 is theirs for the benefits.
Yes, that was when I was saying that the projected schedules calls for salaries and benefits. She said, "Oh, no. That's not what that means." I said, "It means what it says." And she said, "The purpose of your guarantee was to reimburse you if necessary for your benefits." I said, no, I don't find that anywhere in this agreement. So that's where we're at. We're trying to obviously challenge them. I was very straightforward with her and said, I think it's a marketing problem for you in your finished product. You've got a captive consumer base that we transport to you every day. Now it's up to you to produce a product that they want. And I don't think price is what it's all about.
I'm looking at, if these are the numbers here, as of 5/14/2013, so a year old, that Mark had given me. Total operating expense in 2008 was $1.5 million. In 2009, $1.5 million. In 2010, $1.6 million. 2011, $1.6 million. 2012, $1.5 million. And then projected, or 2013, $1.5 million. So their overall expenses haven't changed much over that 6-year period. Revenues, however, went from $1.1 million to $1.2 million and then dropped down to $880,000. That's where the problem is. It's not an expense problem; it's a revenue problem.
It definitely, it's a
Yeah.
case
So
of
her argument
increasing
that the benefits are the issue here is
and I told her that
a red herring.
I said, you got to get the meal counts up.
Exactly.
But our mission right now is to get this contract sorted through and say to them, look, this is what the contract says, and we're gonna go for it.
Go ahead, Carol. You must have just.
Carol Bites, 543, Amity Township. I did. Was there any discussion about the government requirements that are making the food less palatable
Oh, yes.
for the
Yes.
students?
Yes.
I'm not sure, is the board aware of that?
Yes, and that was very much a part of it. They went to great lengths to describe, and they had brought in a basket full of chips and this that now have to have this
Fats
seal
and
on it, and everything but the bananas that she brought in has to have this seal on it, I guess. But and we said we're fully aware of that, but at the same time, these numbers are awfully low.
Doesn't that make it a viable option then to go off of the
Well, that's
MSLP?
Yeah, that's what we have to
That's
decide
what-
because, quite frankly, this thing we have to make a decision as a board whether or not to go out to RFP like in October. Do we not?
well, no later than November. We need to get an RFP out.
Right.
I have started, and I haven't gotten any callbacks, I have started to pursue providers off the grid, so to speak. And I was only half kidding what I said to you the other night. At least in the high school.
I think we need to go out for RFP. I mean, I don't know what
Yeah.
how the other board members feel about this, but
We need to,
certainly need to go out to RFP for other
Because of the
vendors and then
timeline.
look at both. Yeah, because of the timeline, and that's the recommendation we should make to the board. I don't know whether that's something we have to vote on, or you guys just do it.
I think we can just do it,
Right.
and then the board has to make a decision. But in the meantime, I'm making contacts with the commercial food service operators to see what the viability is of moving away from the plan itself, and
Yes.
and then run the numbers as Mr. Rathgeb said in his email. What's it going to cost us if we have to subsidize free and reduce internally and run our own show and forget the NSLP? So that's the other piece that I didn't bring tonight that I'm working through to see.
Well, I see what the reimbursement rate is here. It would be interesting to see what the cost is per meal for a meal. I mean, what's the cost to provide a meal to a student?
The other piece,
Well, you did say that,
250 you said.
250
Didn't
something.
you say 250, Mark?
I think that was the guaranteed.
that was a guarantee.
No, you-
The reimbursement is on the
311 is the government's.
I thought
Yeah.
earlier you had said that they said it cost
Yeah,
she said 250 is what the cost of a meal is
Okay.
for preparation and delivery. That's what she said.
Because price paid per meal, free is 0, reduced was like 40 cents,
Yes.
and then price per meal paid, it used to be $1.85, and we raised it to, $2.30, $2.90, I don't know where we are now, but
You are up to breakfast are $1.45 across the board this year. Elementary lunch is $2.50. Secondary lunch is $2.65.
right.
But the other piece that Mike is pursuing is at a conference he was at as an individual who manages more than one school district and just floats as the manager, and they become self-op. Derry Township, I've got a call on my desk from the fellow over there. Derry just bailed on NSLP. Now, Derry's a very affluent district, and they can afford to subsidize just about anything they want to subsidize.
And probably their free lunch program is probably not as hearty as some other districts as well.
Right. And you have there on the chart too your percentage of free and reduced eligibility, which is we got 42% in BEC, and the others are in the 34 in MAC as well. But anyway, this is where we're at.
Just to refresh my memory, these are our employees still that work for them,
Our employees are paid by us, managed by
managed by them.
Sodexo.
Right, okay. So if we were to outsource this to somebody else, then they'd bring their own employees in?
Negotiated if you want them to give your current employees first refusal, but down the road they become their employees, then they're at their mercy, so to speak.
Yeah, so, I mean, typically, the way typically it would work, I think, would be that our current employees become
Yeah.
food service employees, and then they go on to the new benefits from whoever the food service provider is. I would think the salaries would probably stay the same, but then as you have attrition, they replace them at different
Right.
rates.
Well, and they get pizzas now,
Yes.
Correct.
so they would not get that.
That's correct.
They would get transferred to the new health and
401k or whatever.
401k probably.
Yep. All right, so it sounds to me like next steps are essentially you guys are going to talk to Subers and have him do an analysis of the contract to see, A, what does our contract really say, first of all, and what does that mean in terms of dollars, and B, how does that compare to reality and what we've actually been receiving from this Sodexo and what their interpretation is, because if we're talking a couple $100,000 here, then this is going to go to court.
Absolutely. That's exactly what Mike and I were discussing this afternoon, that we're in year 5 of this 5-year, and we've got to retroactively look at it and see when she told me that they never had a year-end meeting to make a determination of where they ended up, I was
Now, is that responsibility fall on
How
us?
does this work, though? Because now, I mean, if I'm looking at this, because
You on the contract?
no, I'm looking at some financials. So I wish I brought my audits with me, but our change in net assets, right? Isn't that what I'm looking at when I'm looking at the audit? And that was our, that goes into our cafeteria fund, correct? Whatever profits we're making off of the food services are supposed to be going into our cafeteria fund. And our cafeteria fund pays for things like ovens and, you know, all those types of things. So when we were, and what triggered this was I was looking at the change in net assets, and the change in net assets was dropping precipitously from one year to the next. And it's supposed to state an average of about 3 months of operating expenses. So, and it wasn't keeping pace with that. So I guess what I'm wondering is how, I'm looking at total net assets here, and they were going up from one year to the next, but not as much as they're supposed to be. So we had some revenues coming in. Where were the revenues coming from, if not from Sodexo? We getting whatever the residual revenues were, period, and then, but it should have been a minimum of 150? Is that what we're supposed to be?
I'd have to look at it. There is no other revenue aside from you have your a la carte issue, which generates meal equivalents from their standpoint from the expenditure side, but just you said it should equal 3 months of operating?
I don't have the audits in front of me, but my recollection was when it came to the cafeteria fund or whatever, they recommended that we had
Oh,
a
it's a
standing...
recommendation. Oh,
Yeah,
I thought you meant it was something...
No.
to
The
Sodexo.
recommendation was, from an auditing perspective
Okay.
or whatever, was that our balance should be at the minimum 3 months of operating expenses, which would mean it'd have to be, you know, $300,000-$400,000, between like $390,000 to $400 and some odd $1,000. However, our net assets were like ending balance in 2008 was 255, 2009 was 353, so it went up. Then it went to 346, and then it started dropping, then to 318, then to 216, and, you know, so on and so forth. So we're generating revenue at one point, 85,000, 97,000, and then it just went negative.
Where was the increase in the asset area? Just cash?
Well, if I'm looking at it, food service revenue jumped from 08 to 09 by, you know, 50 some odd $1,000, and non-operating revenues, which is state and federal
Right, your
sources,
reimbursements.
went up by another 30, and then up to, you know, so it looks like it was a combination of the two, but then food service revenue dropped off precipitously, and that's when we started throwing negative change in net assets from year to year.
One piece of your non-operating revenue where it could go up with reimbursement is in the reimbursement for Social Security and retirement. You have to watch out for, because whenever the PCERS rate began to really take off, you're going to obviously get more in return, so that would go into that category. That would be part of your increase. But I'd have to look at it year by year and see.
I mean, I do see a note here from one of his assumptions. It says, Sodexo invoice did not properly credit the reimbursement of wages and benefits on the monthly invoice. Parentheses, $61,333.63.
There's your wages and benefits deal again. Yeah, and that was a question that Mike and I had. We went to the girls in payroll and said, are you giving monthly data to Sodexo for our salaries and benefits? They said, no, we never talked to Sodexo. So we got in the meeting and we said, where are you getting this number from? Oh, she says, the historical number we use. I said, no. We're going to use our actual salary and benefit number as a credit.
So when are you guys going to call Subers?
Well, I'll call him. I can call him tomorrow. I said to Mike today, I got to have a directive that I can call the attorney to proceed. So I guess I just got it.
Yeah, I'd be calling him tomorrow, ask him to pull the contract, ask him to do an analysis, or somebody in his firm to do an analysis as to what that means, and then sort of outline to him what the problem is, and then from there, because A, we got to know what's his interpretation of what we're supposed to be getting, right? And then B, what are we actually getting is what we needed to, what you guys are going to need to determine for them. And then when we know what the difference is, that's when we go back to Sodexo and say, how do you want to solve this problem?
Yeah. Might not be a bad time if Brian came back with an opinion. We got the Auditor General here. Have them look it over and say, oh, by the way,
I might be handing the Auditor General some of this stuff
I might leave it on his table.
now and saying, how do you guys look at this? Because, I think you ought to take a look at this spreadsheet that I sent you, price per meal,
I've got that right here.
06, 04, 2013. I think it's a very helpful,
Yeah.
I'll send it around to you guys if I didn't do it, but I think it's a very helpful, it talks about, it gives a summary, what the issues are, wages, financial statements, meal statistics, wage
That's-
reimbursement calculations.
The bottom, the notes he's reading from, Mike, are on that sheet that I gave you on your desk today that we were working on.
Now, this is data that I got from Mark, and I don't know what data Mark was looking at. You guys may be looking at the same data and coming up with different numbers. I don't know, but okay.
But in the meantime, I've got to move ahead with the RFP.
Yeah, I was going to say, just a thought on that, I mean, obviously, we want to make the decision, we've got the option of self-op or going out for a new vendor. If we do go the self-op route, I think we got to put it out there to the employees that, next time, maybe it's 3 years, if we don't get the numbers we need to get them, they need to have a buy-in on that. If they're going to still be employees of the district, they need to perform and get those participation rates up and get, otherwise, then as benefits and salaries, we can't continue to
Right.
support that.
Yeah, I agree. So I'll talk to Mary Beth on that one. One
So-
thing, go ahead.
I was going to say, when you start this RFP, are you going to take like a two-prong approach, which is like A, full service for all the buildings, and then B, pull high school out and run it independent?
That,
Do you
that
mind
would
looking
be
at it from
my-
two different?
That would be my my preference. Do it my sheet here. There it is. When I look at my actual eligibility, high school's at 22, AEC's at 12. Yep. High school would be the logical one to pull out, and because if you go another route and really want to market it, that would be the population you'd want to go for. Yeah, I'll do some further digging on that, Andrew. But,
where are most of our free and reduced? Is that in the high school or is that at the lower levels? I thought
free and reduced eligibility by building is
Percentage-wise, it's Birdsboro and
yeah,
Monocacy.
Birdsboro's highest. Then Monocacy. And see the other.
so. It seemed to me that you would want to, if you kept it in the elementary buildings, right? So you have potential free.
Yeah.
13,000, 24,000, 22,000, and 31,000. I mean, that's 6, 8, 100 and some odd thousand kids versus the high school at 36. So
Yeah.
clearly,
High school's got a total of 250 free and reduced eligible. And
250.
250.
Right, because you got 212 and 38.
Yeah,
so.
yeah, it's the last column
So you
where
have
it says total.
250 total.
Oh, I see.
22%.
What are these dollar signs? Like, you're talking. These are the number of meals. Like, what's
Is it-
potential free? Is that number of meals?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, that's the cost, right? Or
No, that's the number of meals. I should have put meals in there. For instance, AEC, you have 76 eligible free
Right, at a
students.
cost of 13,000,
No, it times 200, or 172 days. The contract is billed on 172 days.
Okay,
So those 76 kids, if they have the potential of collecting a free lunch, there's 13,000 meals.
okay.
We only delivered 7,647, or 58.5% of our potential.
Okay, but, all right, so
So
if
the
the high
loss-
school has a potential of 36,000 meals though, and just say it costs us $3 a meal, so you have a potential of $100,000 that we'd be eating cost-wise if we, so we'd have to make that up.
And that's where,
Okay,
and that's where.
Yeah, but
and
you
that's where-
have 1,000 students at the high school who are hopefully eating, 67,000 meals. So even if they're paying $1 or whatever it is, if they're paying $3 and figure out what the margin is. I mean, if we're breaking even on the food service, then we're breaking even.
Right.
We want to make a little bit of money to support our cafeteria fund, but I don't think we need to be making
No,
money hand over
Right,
fist.
I mean, that's, how that comes, your equipment, repairs, maintenance, all that, right?
Right.
You need a new connection up, and that's,
Well, it's not cheap. Some of those things are like, as I recall, when we bought some of these appliances, they're $20,000, $30,000 a piece.
Oh, yeah. Stainless steel. So that's where we're at.
All right, so go ahead, Carol.
Just a quick note, these assumptions are probably not going to be any good going forward for AEC and BEC because of the realignment. It's going to be more like amalgam.
Yeah, and I don't have good
Of the
numbers
two
yet
buildings.
this year because the application process for free and reduced is ongoing right now to run current numbers. But you're right,
Yeah.
the mix is going to change.
Not for the other buildings, but just for AEC and BEC, I
Yeah.
think, right?
Yeah.
This is going to be an amalgam of the
Yeah.
two.
Yeah. One piece that is missing with the contract that's online was the extension that was, and I don't know what happened, we couldn't find it anyplace.
We just extended it last year, didn't we?
Yes, you've been extending it every year. But the 11-12 year wasn't in what's online, and Sandy didn't have it, so I asked the lady for it yesterday. She sent it to us today, but it's not signed by Sodexo.
We have to have something of that around here.
Well, that's what I said to Sandy. It should have been an attachment to the minutes, so we went through the back door on the minutes. It wasn't there. But you signed it back in 11-12, and she sent it to me, but it doesn't have a signature from Sodexo on it. I was curious.
Well, obviously,
It's just an extension, but
well,
nevertheless.
plus the extension, though. I mean, by deed, we have a contract. They've
Yes.
obviously been providing
Oh, yeah.
service, so
Yeah.
I'm not concerned about that.
I just wanted to see
Yeah.
the breakdown that they used that particular year, and I got that now, so.
All right. So, any other comments on this discussion? All right. So, as I have it here, you guys are going to go back. You're going to hit the budget items that we just discussed a little bit earlier on
We'll
the
have that
13,
next
14, and get some of the explanations for us. You're going to go back and look at the building expenses that you tabulated and try to tie just basically the fixed assets or building-specific assets to those particular facilities. And then as it relates to food services, you're going to call Brian, have him review the contract, determine what it means exactly in terms of our reimbursement guarantee from Sodexo, what their obligations are there too, and then we're going to compare that to what we've actually received from Sodexo. And it doesn't sound to me like we really even know yet because of the invoices and everything else they're sending us. There's gobbledygook. So, and then...
That's this year, but we haven't identified anything received the last 3.
Right. Well, this sounds to me like it's got to get straightened out. And maybe if you guys, I don't know what maybe we need to bring an independent auditor in to, review the Sodexo books and invoices if it comes to that.
That's where I say the AG.
Right. And then, okay, so that's all I've got. Is there anything else for anybody in terms of finance?
food service or
Anything?
I actually had a question.
Yes.
I don't know if it's potential cost savings or not, but I was curious. do we actually have our own payroll system and run our own payroll?
Yes.
Have you ever looked at doing that as outsourced?
I've always wondered that too.
We,
You guys are already talking about that now.
well, we
Have you
are,
thought about outsourcing?
we are evaluating our total operation here. Let's just, and that could very well be a part of that section of the business office.
Well, the other thing we looked at too was was brought up because Tredyffrin Township or Tredyffrin Easttown School District outsourced all of their PTs, OTs, and everything else. I don't know whether we have any of those on staff or not, but like,
I don't think we have any on staff. The only thing we have that we haven't outsourced, I believe, is psychologists.
right. And we talked about outsourcing psychologists too, as on a per diem basis as needed, because one of the issues we had heard over the years was, our psychologists are overwhelmed, with doing the IEPs and everything else. And my response was, well, then outsource and bring somebody in on an as-needed basis to take care of the flow. But you ought to be able to expect a certain amount of work product out of a particular
Right.
psychologist, in terms of caseload. And if you got somebody who's not keeping pace with that, well, then that's a whole other issue.
Right. But we can certainly we can look into that because Mike is getting involved with evaluations and performance and the whole deal.
Can you outsource them under, they're part of are they part of the professional side?
Some are unionized and some are not. As far as my staff union?
No, the psychologists.
Psychologists, are they?
They may be bargaining.
Yeah, they're part of the collective bargaining agreement.
That would be the.
But is that something like you couldn't outsource teachers? Can you outsource the psychologists? Or only additional psychologists, like if you needed?
I think just additional.
Okay.
I do want to make one comment on the payroll. I don't know. The CSIU is integrated to work with the payroll module. It would be awkward to outsource.
It would have to be a SIF compliant. They would have to use, if we outsourced it, the provider would have to be SIF compliant to our general ledger system.
Right, and then actually you would think, because they clock in and out, people use that for time clocks and
We
everything.
got this new system.
So
didn't we?
could it, those data files go directly to a payroll company? Almost?
That's where the SIF compliance would come in.
Okay.
See if they could talk to each other. Yeah, currently, the new system is computer login, correct, Mike?
Correct.
Okay, my question.
One thing we talked about last time was the River Rock Academy lease. We noticed that there were some typos on there, stuff like that. Has anybody pulled out the lease and looked at it and talked to them about that?
I haven't talked to River Rock. I thought they were going to contact the solicitor for that, but I'll find out. Numbers today are 12 and 33 as of today, this morning.
We have, okay. 33, so it went up a couple.
Yeah, it was on the 5th of September. It was
30.
It was 14 and 30. 14 us, 30 total. Today it's 12 and 33.
Okay.
Let's talk.
Last time we were here, we also talked about the Health Consortium meeting date, and you guys are going to get in touch with, I think it was Delaware Valley Health Insurance Trust. Is that?
Yeah, we're working on, I had one meeting with one outside entity. I've got that one to schedule yet. Mike did go to the consortium meeting.
Is there a, I would
On the
say,
8th.
with the consortium, is there a time period, an opt-out, you gotta give them 180 days, or?
It's a year.
A
Yeah,
year,
it's a year in
so.
advance.
Yeah, when I stumbled upon a folder on the consortium, and in it was the pages out of the agreement. I can't find the complete agreement yet. I've got to contact them for
I
that.
may have a copy of that.
Do you?
I might have to look for it. I
All
did
right.
ask for it one for
But the
before.
pages regarding termination, terminating the relationship were in there. So,
Yeah.
So-
I hope we're cleaning up the, where we store all our documents. That seems to be,
the contracts,
that seems to be an ongoing issue, yeah.
well, that's
I could
what-
probably provide copies of everything. They're under my desk in a pile about this big that I had to ask for
Maybe
copies from.
electronic age, you know what I mean? You'd think you could store them all in an electronic file.
Well, a lot of them have been placed in between the Boone, whatever,
Right.
for board members and the public site as well. But
Like that should be, the health consortium contract, stuff, that should be on the website. I mean, that's a huge deal.
I missed it.
It's a public document. I'm not saying it is, I'm just saying it should be. I mean,
At least for board members.
definitely for board members. I mean, well, now it's a public document, it's subject to right to know, so why wouldn't you put it out there?
Yeah,
So
I
it's
was
a
saying,
unique- wow.
saying earlier, it's funny, because I've been trying to find some of the teacher contracts, and our website is one of the minuscule that actually have all this stuff, you can get to it. You go to these other school districts.
I think you have to go to some of the bigger ones. Treader in Easttown is a pretty good one. They've got
Are
a
you
lot of
familiar
stuff
with
online. TE, yeah.
You mentioned it. Do you know Art at TE?
No.
I've known Art for years. Art McDonald.
Yeah. You give 'em a
So
call.
we would-
They're
so-
a
and
good
that-
resource down there.
The consortium year runs the school year, I guess, right? July 1st to June 30th?
Yes.
So we wouldn't be able to get out till 16.
Yeah, that's what we figured. It's going to take us a year and a half.
Yeah, I want you to, yeah, give us an update on what you,
No, go ahead. Tell them. We can distribute it to them.
Yeah, well.
We'll scan it in and
I
send it out.
just want to make a quick comment that the consortium currently has a $20 million fund balance. And so some of that is our funds.
But we don't get that if we leave.
I believe so. Not from what I've.
They keep it.
did they have a discussion of fund balance at all? Like, other than it's $20 million? I mean, what's the target for a fund balance? How many claims have they had against that fund balance?
Yes, we have documentation.
Mike, he'll scan that in tomorrow and send it.
Yeah, but you were at the meeting on the 8th, though, right?
But that, how long did that last? About 20 minutes?
20 minutes.
Yeah.
What?
It didn't last very long.
Yeah. I was blown away. I sent him.
Why
it was,
not?
It was on the 8th, the same night as we were here, so I sent Mike over there.
Right.
He called me, said, I'm back.
What did they discuss? How many people were there?
It was a packed house. I'd say about 40 people.
Okay.
Fleetwood High School.
And I showed up about 10 minutes into it, and
Because he
it
couldn't get
ended
in the
about
building.
15 minutes after that. So it was pretty brief. And
What did they tell you in the 15 minutes that you were there?
they talked claims, financial health, some changes in legislation. Mainly the discussion was on how LEA should treat changes in the mayor's law. It was a big discussion, and mainly financial.
Well, all right, so were they above or below their estimated or projected claims?
They're very favorable at the moment.
Okay, has it been that, I mean, we gotta go, when's the next meeting? Because I got a lot of questions.
November.
November what?
Same night as our meeting.
Well, we'll change our meeting.
Maybe we should change.
Honestly, I would recommend that you contact the BCIU business manager. He's the linchpin for that thing.
Yeah.
Blessing?
Blessing, Carl Blessing, I'm sure he would answer any questions you have. Honestly.
Well, okay, so now that's a self-insured, is that, I mean,
That's what
okay,
they-
so they're holding that $20 million and they pay claims with it. But yeah, they should have some target number of what they feel their surplus, I mean, because Tibbet has the same, even they have the same, we have a surplus, but they look at their claim trend, and what they do is if they have too much money in the fund, they give it back, they use it as rate stabilization
I was going
Right.
to say,
to the
they,
Or
municipalities.
If you have lists of questions, on the next BCIU meeting, I'll take it with me.
Okay. Well, I mean, like, my questions tend to come to me as I hear discussion.
Got it,
And so somebody says something, I'm like, wait a minute, time out, let's go back, and now I've got a question, and depending on what they say, I may have 5 more questions. So,
I think
They'll
I think
kick
you
you out
take
of
the
the
time.
yeah, they would kick me out of the
I
meeting.
think you take the time to.
I mean, I think my concerns would be, A, what's the targeted amount of the fund balance? Is it a $400 million, or, we're way short, or is $20 million where we're supposed to be, or could it be less? What's the claim history? He says, you said that it was favorable.
It's been favorable.
But does that mean it's been favorable for 1 year? Has it been favorable
That's
for the
right.
last 5 years? Do they anticipate that trend going forward? How is the old Cadillac issue with Obamacare going to impact this? What kind of steps are they taking to prepare for that? I mean, They got a lot of questions, you know. Is everybody still gung ho? Where do they anticipate rates going, you know, next year and the year after? What steps are they taking to mitigate increases in the premiums?
I think they, because of this fund balance, is why they backed away from the rate increase. Just as I landed here in May, I saw an exchange of emails from you because you had heard at a board meeting that it was going to be 7%, and it came in and the budget was, I think Mark was using 7%.
That's one of the reasons why the healthcare has been favorable to budget. Has been their own favorability.
Well, it should be, because if they're not paying out, they shouldn't be charging.
Right.
Right.
The story I got was the increases were higher because they were building that balance up, and now supposedly they've kind of achieved that ball of money that they were looking for.
So if 20 million was their goal, as long as they're finding an affordable stop loss premium to protect them, and 20 million is a logical. But if their claims are only coming in at $1 million a year, and next year,
And they're charging school districts, you know, I don't know what they're charging. I mean, what do we pay in terms of premium every year?
well,
Close to, if
A family.
employer is close to 5 million, but the employer, our part is about 4 million, just over 4 million.
And we're one of 18 or whatever it is in the consortium.
I don't have any right
I would love to see, do they give you financial statements for
Yes,
this
I
thing?
have,
That's what we-
I can
he'll
answer
scan those.
most of your questions with the documents I have. I can't,
Yeah.
not off the top of my head right now.
I'd love to see the financial statements.
yeah, good one.
Yeah, I'll send that on tomorrow.
now. He's salary paid them.
He's got a lot of questions. Maybe, you know, maybe the answers are all right there.
Well, and I don't know if they do, I mean, and maybe they do this, you don't know, but I mean, I know like we have an annual meeting, we just had a meeting, well, no, this was workers' comp in September, I think we had the health in June, but they lay all that out. This is what we took in, this is what our claims were, this is what we thought our claims were gonna be, you know, this is what our investment return was. They chart all that, they show it all, and then they're like, okay, well, we decided we're gonna take an extra $2 million to put towards rate stabilization, or we're not gonna put as much towards rate stabilization, whatever, and they give that to everybody. They send it out as a PowerPoint. And
How many are your?
Can you send that PowerPoint around
yeah.
so that we can see what, because I'd be interested to know, like, if that's an excellent template. So now I've got a template that I can, you know, look at and say, well, look, this is very informative, right? So maybe that's something we should be asking from the Health Consortium, that they publish to all the different school districts, and they provide us with a report on an annual basis or quarterly basis. I don't know.
I think there's like 62 municipalities. I think 3 or 4 school districts. They just picked up one of the counties.
Yeah.
But they only took the counties on right now. They're actually trying to create like a separate trust for the, you know,
For
for
the
that,
county.
like to work that out. So I mean, they've really grown just because the savings are and there's so much flexibility. I mean, here you've got to get 16 groups that all have the same benefits and all have the same whatever, and that's just craziness.
All right, so we're going to get the financial statements
You
from,
might get them sooner or later. Mike may have put them on to me already. I got to get back there. It'll be the night probably when you did it. But
Maybe.
what do you call that, divot?
Delaware Valley.
Oh, yeah, I did.
Insurance. Delaware Valley Health
The
Trust.
9/9.
Okay, so you can
Yeah,
send,
send it to them.
Yeah,
They'll have it.
I have it in my email. I'll
It's
send it to
coming.
you guys.
all right, so you're going to send out the PowerPoint from the divot, and
Mike's going to send over the.
then I will look to see if I have, but I think you need to go directly to BCIU or whoever to get the Health Consortium declarations, bylaws, whatever their governing documents are.
You don't think it's under your desk?
It probably is. I'm going to go look. But you're talking about boxes and boxes, 7 years worth of files
I'm
under my
being-
desk.
I'm being facetious.
I've got my own little Devadoon archive.
Probably is.
Yeah.
It's probably,
Probably is a fire hazard.
No,
probably a
Yeah.
violation of township code.
I don't have anywhere else to put it. Let me put it that way. So, but it's been very helpful to go back and say, wait a minute, this is what everybody was looking for. I think I may even have the only copies of the
Magna Charter.
the prospectuses for all the debt issues too. Nobody was
Wow.
interested in having those things,
For
but
the official statements, I've got some on my
do
shelf.
you? All right.
As I unpacked, in the closet in my office, I've got everything organized that I found on debt issues.
He's got the
Now
land-
we know
he's got
what-
the land grant from William Penn from the.
Now we know what Andrew does when he can't sleep. He reads.
You see when my emails come out, don't you?
I know.
They're like at 2 o'clock in the morning.
You send it, Mike?
Yeah, I sent the health trust documents to all your, to the board emails, so you guys should have it.
Thank you. Okay, any other questions? Concerns, comments, opinions? Nothing? Okay, we'll call this meeting adjourned. 8:09.